Welcome to a bonus edition of the A-Pod. Fun chats, fun topics, fun people here on MSGNetworks.com and on iTunes. I'm sitting in the presence of a legend right now. If you watch MSG Networks, you know him very, very well. If you read the Toronto Star, you know him very, very well. I read the Toronto Star growing up in Toronto, so I'm very familiar with this man. He is known as the Maven. His name is Stan Fischler. Has been covering hockey for, 80 years now?
Yeah, something like that.
For a very long time.
No, actually, the truth is, I was 9 when I was 7 when I saw my first game in 39. So I've been watching hockey from 39 to now.
You know how they that Malcolm Gladwell book that says you need 10,000 hours in order to become an expert at something?
Really?
I'm guessing you're at, like 1 million hours by now?
I never count.
I'll guess.
I wasn't good at math.
So we decided to do a little fun episode where we would get questions from people on Twitter. We use the hashtag #AskTheMaven.
Right.
While we have you, we'll also talk a little playoffs.
Good.
Because there's some playoff hockey happening right now.
Right.
And you've written extensively about the Rangers run, as you have in several years. But let's start there. Let's start with the Rangers defeating the Montreal Canadiens. What has been your overview of the Rangers in this series?
Well, I started Arda with a pre-playoff matchup for the MSG Networks blog I do called the Maven's Ravin. And what I wrote was it would be Rangers in 6. So what was the reason? Both teams are very strong in goal. Price, of course, has the reputation in Canada of being the best goalie in the NHL, if not the world. And there was some questions about Lundqvist because of the injuries during the season, and there was concern. So on paper, the Canadiens had the edge. On defense, they had their top guy was Weber, and our top guy was McDonough. Now, there was no way to figure how Shea was going to play. There were a lot of ifs there, and I said the defense would be even, and I gave the Rangers the edge on the offense, and that was because of the ability to roll 4 lines. I would never have predicted that Tanner Glass would get the winning goal in the first game. But when you think back and you look at that goal was a work of art because he got it on his backhand, and the backhand is really the toughest shot for goalies. It gets them crazy. When Rocket Richard broke the 50 goals in 50 game record for the Canadiens, most of his goals were on the backhand. People don't realize that. So it was a beautiful shot. And
did he have a curve on his stick, Rocket Richard, or was it a straight?
Nobody. There were no curves then.
No curves at all.
Curve was unheard of. Wouldn't even dream about putting a curve because when it's straight, you can do it back and forth. But the point is, so a lot of surprises unfolded. Brendan Smith turns out to be a tremendous asset, and I felt that. The Canadiens plus would be their size, and the fact that they were playing tough, and they could have intimidated the Rangers, and in some cases they did in spots. But the most pleasant surprise for me is that the oft-maligned Dan Girardi turned out to be not only the second best. Certainly the second best defenseman on the Rangers after Shea, and right up there with McDonough. But Girardi was very careful with his checks, but when he nailed a guy, he nailed him. Clean, hard. And the right down to the end, the Rangers were able to fight back and do well. You take the last fight between Pacioretty and Vesey. Pacioretty may have won the fight. He didn't win the war.
And to be fair, the Garden crowd was chanting for Vesey even if it was perceived to be a loss of a fight. The Garden crowd was very happy that Vesey even dropped the gloves with Pacioretty.
Absolutely. That was, you're right, that was the most symbolic thing about it, that he went with a bigger guy who was a veteran and in excellent shape. But that was the kind of thing that evened things out for the Rangers. They weren't afraid to go with these guys. And, so in the end, it turned out to be very close, scary close, because when Canadians went up 2-1, it looked pretty grim. And that fourth game was decisive.
How about that overtime with Mika Zibanejad? That was Game 5. I felt like as soon as I saw that overtime, Rangers pressing, you just felt that they were going to win that game. They were hungry. It reminded me of the Capitals in Game 6. That just happened.
Absolutely. They took the game away from them. The problem with something like that is, as you know, in hockey, you can outplay a team and they'll get a break and they'll win the game. But what happened was that, ironically, Kreider missed a pretty good setup earlier and winds up with the shot that's deflected that goes to Zibanejad. So it was nice. It was nice.
Why don't we talk about the second round matchup? So the Rangers have Ottawa. They don't have to drive too far from where they just were, an hour and a half away, the nation's capital. Are you surprised the Senators dispatched of the Bruins?
No, I'm not. I wasn't surprised because the Bruins had several key guys out with injuries. I mean, you're talking about two key defensemen. To me, McQuaid was a very, very, very important part of that team. Yet the Bruins kept them close, and they had some young guys come through. And
what about Charlie McAvoy? That was, I mean, to play college hockey, and then all of a sudden, here you are playing in the NHL playoffs.
It's funny you mention him because I was walking around here, I guess it was October, and one of the guys who lives near McAvoy, who works here at the Garden, he pulled me aside, and he said, this kid is really good. Keep an eye on him. And look how good he became. Yeah, a real find. Just proves that if you have ice and you have some pretty good instructions like you have in Phoenix, for example, where they send a guy to the Maple Leafs who scores 4 goals in his first game, you can get good people. And, you know, started with Nicky Fotiu.
That's right, exactly. So the Rangers have Ottawa, Craig Anderson in net, of course, Erik Karlsson, Norris candidate. What do you make of this series?
Well, I just, it's up there now on the website. My Maven is Ravin. I said Rangers in 6. And the Rangers have an edge in goal. When you look at, Anderson is a good goalie, and Lundqvist is a Hall of Famer. And that's the difference right there. So you go to defense, and Karlsson is remarkable. But he's got 2 hairline fractures in his heel, and he's going to be limited. So they're limited right away. And so Karlsson's sidekick, Mathot, he's going to be limited. They've got very good forwards. Neither team has a superstar forwards, but the Rangers have more depth, and that's why I'm picking them in 6.
What do you make of this lends itself to the conversation about the playoff structure, right? Because the Rangers now have faced 2 Atlantic Division teams, and really the Metropolitan Division is the division that had the powerhouse teams. The Rangers clinched the playoffs weeks before in a wild card spot. Would you change the playoff format? How do you feel about it?
Well, it's a lot of talk. I would have it so you don't have 2 teams. I mean, you just don't want to have the best teams against each other right at the beginning. But on the other hand, everybody accepted this. Nobody was complaining about it. The owners and the commissioner with the Players Association agree on this, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I don't remember anybody marching around with a sign at the owners' meeting or at the Players Association or Donald Fear getting up and say, we got to change this. So this is the way it is. It's just like that rule. If you shoot the puck over the glass, you get 2 minutes for a delay of game. Well, a lot of people think it's a stupid rule, right? So if it's a stupid rule, get it out of there. But it always comes up, and it's always not changed. So this is what you hand it on a platter, and you make the best of it. You grin and bear it. And that's the way I feel about it now. There are other ways, but this is the way it is. If the players say, well, we want it different, so I'll bet they change it, but the players haven't.
So further to your point about the penalties, what is your personal opinion about the fact that it's obvious in the playoffs versus the regular season, there's more leniency among the referees for certain calls, except for the automatic calls, the dumping the puck over the glass in your own zone, the high sticking, too many men on the ice. The automatic calls will always be called. But roughing, tripping often, hooking, whatever it may be, whether there might be zero tolerance in the regular season, that zero tolerance goes away in the playoffs.
There are two different seasons. There's the regular season and the playoffs. Playoffs are a war game on ice. That's what it's all about. It's a war. And all's fair in love and war. And that's basically the way the referees go about it. Now, we, meaning people like me who go back to the earlier days, this is the way hockey is supposed to be. There's not supposed to be chintzy penalties. Unfortunately, I have to tell you, Arda, that the game has gotten so fast that even with all the high-tech stuff, the officials miss things. There was an offside that the Canadiens had. It was a clear offside, and they missed it. And it eventually wound up leading to a goal. Oh, what are you going to do? But I subscribe to the let them play philosophy, and it basically evens out.
So,
and I love it.
Let me ask you this. I know you said let them play, but having covered the game for so many decades, seeing so many eras of hockey, would you ever accept an era of hockey that was completely technological, where there's sensors on the nothing like that? You would say, nope, I want human error.
Yeah, in some ways it's already gone too far, but it's 2017. It's not 1937. And we have to adapt, and that's what we're doing. The whole point is, I remember interviewing John Ziegler when he was president of the NHL.
Yeah.
And I said, John, why don't you guys do what they do in the automobile business and try to study to improve things in various ways to make the game even better? Quality control. And his answer was, Henry Ford's answer, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But what the Bettman administration is doing is trying to make it as accurate as possible, which is a noble thing. So that's it. You know, if you watch any of the games, the last 3 games, Rangers over Montreal, Ottawa over Boston, and the Washington over Toronto. 3 fantastic performances.
Yeah.
Great entertainment, great excitement. So it's fine.
A lot of the missed calls, too, though. I mean, I think Rick Carpinello said it. There was a missed high stick in the Rangers game, Game 6, for example. But that's the human error, right? Like, you would accept that over...
I give you 2 answers to that.
Yeah.
The first answer is 2 words. That's hockey.
Uh-huh.
And when Jack Capuano was coaching the Islanders, I remember a game where it was an awful missed call by the officials that affected the game. And after the game, I said, Jack, so what about that? And he says, very calmly, very lucidly, the hope is and the expectation is that in the end, it'll even out. So that's what you hope will happen. Listen, like I told you, this game has really gotten so fast, it's tough for these guys. Can't see everything.
I'm sure this is a conversation we will dive deep into another podcast, but I want to get onto, a lot of people sent in questions even people that we know. Here's one from Antoinette Camerano who said, what's next for Toronto? They use the hashtag #AskTheMaven, by the way. So
is that good or bad?
It was trending worldwide, Stan.
Is that good or bad?
It's very good. Very good.
Okay.
What's next for Toronto? Youngsters playing with house money. Where do they go from here? Obviously, they lost in 6 games to the Washington Capitals. 5 overtime games. 5 overtime games. These group of youngsters that were supposed to be swept by the President's Trophy winners, Stan, take Ovechkin and company to 5 overtime games.
Well, first of all, if you look at some of my tweets at the beginning of the series, I said, beware of these Maple Leafs. That's number one, okay?
When was the last time you even thought of anything using those words, beware the Maple Leafs?
Never. Really. But, in answer to the question, you'd have to be living on Mars not to expect this team to get even better. Why? Number one, the goalie really came around. He really came around after having a rough start to the season. So they got good goaltending. The defense is going to get better. They're going to pick up one really good veteran defenseman. So that's 2. Guys like Hunwick, the ex-Ranger, played really good. These guys learned. So you got, and then you got these forwards. There's no speed limit the way they play. You know, they're up and down and up and down. If they were driving cars, these guys would be in jail getting all these speeding tickets. It's insane. It's insane watching. It's watching playing pinball and you're getting things being knocked off the flippers. They're all over the place. It's just amazing. And the bottom line, Arda, is they have arguably one of the top 5 coaches in hockey. I mean, and not a bad GM in Lamoriello, and not a bad president.
He's won a cup or 2.
So you could logically say now that next season they'll be up there for the cup. Why not?
That fast next season.
Why? I mean,
what pieces would you put in place? What is missing from that team right now? In your opinion?
One veteran defenseman and one younger guy who might be available.
So let's just, and I'm prognosticating here. July 1st comes around, Kevin Shattenkirk. Everyone's like, well, he's coming to the Rangers, local guy, he's a rental at Washington. If I'm Toronto, am I making a play for him?
Absolutely, but I believe he'll either wind up with the Rangers or the Devils.
Interesting.
The Devils got a lot that they can throw at him. And with the Devils, he'll automatically be the best defenseman. He'll be the alternate captain. And it would be enticing. And, of course, the Rangers remain the favorites because they are the Rangers. It's the Jimmy Vesey theory. Want to play in the apple. Bang. End of story.
Right. One thing, so I was listening to the Toronto feed, Joe Bowen, who hit his 3,000th game this season, so another legend in broadcasting. He said at the end of the game, he said that based on how this series unfolded and the way that the Toronto Maple Leafs brought it to the Capitals, he believes that the Leafs stole the Stanley Cup from the Capitals, essentially saying the Capitals may not have enough in the tank left after this series to go on and win the Cup. Well, what do you think about that?
First of all, Bowen has been around, and his insights are very valuable, and in this case, they're particularly valuable. But I don't think it's so much because of what the Leafs took out of them. I think they learned a lot. The Leafs were very instructive to them, and if I don't mind contradicting Joe, I would say that the series was more beneficial for Washington than detrimental, because this was one hell of a wake-up call, and also because of the fact that it showed the Capitals that you have to adjust to a fast team, which they just happen to be playing next.
Yeah.
So I think, and of course, they've got a pretty good lineup. The thing that bothered me if you were looking at it from Washington's viewpoint, is that Washington did not have the superior goaltending. Holtby almost blew. He almost blew the game down at the end. He was lucky. He was very lucky. He's got to get his act together against Pittsburgh, whether Fleury plays or whether Murray plays. It's nice, Murray and Fleury.
It rhymes.
Yeah. But again, Bowen makes a good point. I like to think I did too, since it's our show.
I have to say, I've missed listening to Joe Bowen calls. I mean, I grew up on them growing up in Toronto.
Well, I grew up on Foster Hewitt.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, man, that's amazing.
That's what made me a Leaf fan.
Really?
Yeah, in 42, for my 10th birthday, my parents gave me a little Philco. It was called the Transitone radio. And it was during my birthday was in the middle of the playoffs. They're playing the Red Wings. That's when they lost the first 3 in a row. And I'm turning the knob, and I go from 710 toward 770. It was from WOR to WJZ. And all of a sudden, in the middle, I'm listening to this guy announcing the Leafs-Red Wings final. And, of course, it was Foster Hewitt. I was captivated. I later met him when I was newspapering. I met him in the early 60s. I was covering the Leafs-Blackhawks final in 62 in Chicago, and there was a little press room. And I was absolutely able to go up to my idol and to tell him what he meant to me. I'm sure I was, a lot of people have done that over the years.
Oh, he's immortalized. I mean, the media area at Air Canada Centre is called the Foster Hewitt Gondola for a reason, right? He's the man. He's the GOAT.
And his opening was "Hello, Canada," and hockey fans in Newfoundland and our boys overseas. That's what he did in 42.
Funny to think, like Newfoundland became a part of Canada in 1945.
Yeah, it wasn't then.
Wow.
That's why,
yeah.
Hockey fans in Canada and in Newfoundland and the boys overseas.
Yeah.
It was "Hello, Canada," and hockey fans in Newfoundland and our boys overseas.
Wow. What a crazy thing to think. So let's go back to Washington, because here's the big matchup. People wanted to see it, and now we're seeing it. This Moby Dick and Captain Ahab all over again. But the Washington Capitals, President's Trophy, once again, odds-on favorites to win the Stanley Cup. And yet here they are facing the Stanley Cup champs, a team that has had their number in the playoffs. What are we saying here, Stan?
It's funny you mentioned that, because I just read an odds maker, and he still has Washington as favorite, but not by a lot.
Do you think that's historic? Is there a historical bias there, or is it based on?
No. This guy is objective. But one thing we used to say when Joe Louis was fighting, and he was the heavyweight champ, never bet against the champs. The thing is, when you lose a guy like Letang, that's a lot. On the other hand, they've got Crosby and Malkin. That's a good duet. And,
not bad, yeah.
And it's better than Ovechkin and Oshie, but not by a lot. So I'm going to I say that I haven't picked this series yet, so this is the first time I'm going to do it. I'm going to pick the Caps in 7.
Wow.
Why wow?
No, it just, you know what? I shouldn't say wow, but it's just because of the entire history of what's happened the last 7 years or 10 years.
You could say that the Caps always choke. That's what we used to say about my Brooklyn Dodgers until 1955. But I have a good feeling, as I said before, that they've learned from that series with Toronto.
They certainly have. I think you're right. And I think that it'll help them with the speed of the Penguins, for sure. I want to find something. Speaking of TJ Oshie, I'm looking for a tweet that I saw yesterday. I want to read it, just in case people listening to this may not have known this. Let's see if I can find it here. Apparently, obviously TJ an abbreviation, but I'm trying to find where this is. Yes, so there's a guy I follow on Twitter. His name is Dmitry Filipovich. Very good with analytics and numbers in hockey. He says, I love being the person that breaks the news to people that the TJ in TJ Oshie stands for Timothy Jr. I did not know this. It's such a dork move, too, he says. His actual name is Timothy Leaf. He does not go by T.L. Oshie. He goes by T.J. Oshie, Timothy Jr. Oshie. I've never heard that before. I've never heard Junior being part of the abbreviation.
Me neither.
So that's an interesting thing.
There were some awfully good juniors. In fact, Leo Reese Jr., who played for the Rangers, but
he wasn't L.J. Reese, though.
No, but he was a junior who scored a major goal in 50 against the Leafs in Game 7.
Let's see what other people have been saying here. Yeah, this is fun. How are you enjoying this? Is this is one of the first podcasts you've done millions of radio interviews. What about podcasts?
I used to do a thing on the Devil's Show with Matty Locklear. I love Ask the Mavens. I love it.
Nice. How about from Ron Taub? He says, which second round series is the most intriguing to you? He says Edmonton Anaheim. What do you think? What's the most intriguing one to you?
Well, that reminds me of a song from a great Broadway musical called Finian's Rainbow. And the song was, when I'm not near the girl I love the girl I'm near. I am blogging the Ranger series. How can I not love a Ranger Ottawa series? And I remember a few years ago, the Ranger Ottawa series was terrific. I remember, I think it was Chris Neal was the bad guy at that time. In any event, so this is my focus and this is my favorite. Apart from that, I go with Washington-Pittsburgh. Edmonton, once it gets more than 2,000 miles away, I get a little less interested.
I'm interested in McDavid. I want to see how far he can carry that team.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But otherwise,
we saw Matthews, and we saw Matthews at the beginning of the season with 4 goals. We thought, well, this ain't good. This guy can't really keep it going. And look what he did.
Yeah, he's absolutely terrific. Patrick McCormick says, out of the 3 local teams, this is a historical question. Now we're getting back into history. Diving into that brain of Stan Fischler, the Maven here. Out of the 3 local teams, who has had the best performance in a single game in the history of the postseason that you've ever covered of the local teams? Islanders, Devils, Rangers.
Well, it's impossible to ignore the Messier hat trick against the Devils in terms of the impact it had on the media, the back page of the Post, the promise, and the fact that they went on and they came from behind. They won the game, they won the series with that Matteau goal, and it all started with Messier in the third period. And I did that game.
You did that game?
Yeah, I was there for that game. Historically, one of my favorites is in 1950. I don't know whether you're aware of this, but the Rangers scored a huge upset, beating the Canadiens in the first round in 5 games, played the Red Wings in the final, 1950, went 7 games. The Rangers didn't play a single home game. Played 7 games because in those days the circus took over the old garden.
Right. Okay.
So they played 5 games in Detroit's Olympia and 2 home games in Toronto at Maple Leaf Gardens.
What did they do with regards to the fans? They just sold tickets to local Toronto hockey fans?
Oh, they filled the joint.
With who, though? Like, who was there?
Well, any Toronto hockey fan.
Any Toronto hockey fan.
Yeah, they rooted for the Rangers because it was a Ranger home game. That was the year that the Leafs had won 3 in a row, and that was the year they were knocked off by that Leo Reese Jr. in the first round. So Toronto fans hated the Red Wings.
Okay.
And this was a Ranger home game.
So the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Now, in that series, the Rangers captain, Don Bones Rawley, he's nicknamed Bones because he was skinny. He was like a skeleton. Great center. And Bones Rawley scored 2 sudden death goals, one of them on his stomach. And at that time, that was spectacular. Actually, the Rangers were ahead 3-2. And I remember that was a terrific event at that time. But, you can't overlook Messier.
Yeah. Actually, Patrick has a follow-up question, which may be the same answer, in fact. Do you have a favorite playoff Ranger game in the team's history?
Well, I have more than one, but certainly you have to understand that from the start of the war, or for us it was the 41-42 season. In fact, the Rangers played the Bruins on Pearl Harbor night at the Garden and beat them 5-4. The Rangers lost more good players to the armed forces than any team. So when the war ended, it was they had missed the playoffs in 42-43, 43-44, 44-45, 45-46, 46-47. Imagine that. So here I am, a hockey fan, waiting for my first playoff in person. And in 47-48, they played the Red Wings. So seeing my first playoff game at the old Garden, this was a great event for me. But the Rangers got beat, so it wasn't that great. I would say, in terms of playoffs, you have to go with the 94 year.
Yeah.
Because
Game 7.
And part of it had to do with the drama. It was the Battle of the Hudson that led to the finals, and then you had this anticlimax where the Rangers are leading 3-1. Everybody thinks it's over. The celebrations before Game 5 at the Garden were incredible, and Vancouver wins. Then they go back to Vancouver and they win again, and now it's Game 7. So that was endless melodrama.
I found out, this is just a sidebar, that I recently became friends with Howie Rose's daughter, Alyssa, and she told me that Howie Rose and Stéphane Matteau, on the anniversary of that goal, every year they talk on the phone.
Well,
that's how important that call was.
Well, yeah.
Not only to the city, but just in history.
I mean, I can think of so many significant events. Like we were up in, speaking of Ottawa,
yeah.
I did the Ottawa Devils series when they went to the final in 2003. And I remember we were driving up to Roland Dratch, my producer, I just saw. We were driving up to the thing, and everybody in Ottawa thought it would be over for the Senators winning. And Jeff Friesen, who is not very well known as a Devil, scoring the winning goal with maybe 2 minutes left. It was one of the a fantastic. Or being there for the Islander win for the 4th Cup when they beat Edmonton, 4 straight. So many of them.
This is a random question, but we talked about this on the MSG Hockey Show. I really want your opinion on this. We tried to put together Mount Rushmores for each franchise. That was a topic that we did on the show. And with the Islanders, the consensus was it's got to be 4 players from the dynasty years. And I was trying to argue that there would be a case made for Tavares. And I'm wondering, what do you think? Who would you put on the New York Islanders Mount Rushmore?
Too soon for Tavares, that's for sure.
Is he not the best player to wear an Islanders uniform since the dynasty, though?
Not necessarily. Patty LaFontaine.
But for the Islanders, though, like
Patty LaFontaine was a phenomenal Islander, and Patty was the hero of that marathon game in Washington. It's got to be. My picks would be Trottier, Bossy, Gillies. That's 3, and Billy Smith and Potvin.
So one of the 2 would be round out the 4.
Pardon?
It's got to be 4.
Well,
only 4. We can.
Okay.
That's the difficulty of picking.
Well,
the Mount Rushmore.
You can't omit Billy Smith.
Okay.
You can't omit Potvin. You can't omit Bossy and Trottier.
Okay, so those are the 4. Which is and I'm not saying that that's not a bad 4 to pick. I was trying to make the case for Tavares. I figure if the Islanders ever won a Stanley Cup with him as captain, then
story.
And there's people in the office here that will say no. Even if that were to happen, you still go with the dynasty because they won 4. But to me, I think that the accomplishment of Tavares leading an Islanders team to a Stanley Cup, to me, would be substantial enough in this era of hockey to put him on the Mount Rushmore.
Okay, but you got to remember, no team has ever won 19 straight playoff series. You realize what that is? 19 straight play. No team is going to ever do that again, even come close. That's what these guys did.
So it's almost like they have to have their own separate Mount Rushmore.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, fair.
Good try, though.
Who would you put on the, now that we're on the topic, and I love hearing your opinions on this, what would you put on the Rangers Mount Rushmore?
The Rangers you're talking about from 1926 to now.
I'm putting Frank Boucher on there.
Of course. Of course.
I know you and I have had conversations about Frank Boucher extensively off podcast, but do you feel like there's a recency bias?
Okay. 4 people, right?
Yes.
So there are 4 cups. So you got Boucher.
Yep.
Then I put Bill Cook from the 1933 team, okay? Then you got the 1940 team, the guy who scored the cup-winning goal, Brian Hextall, and then Messier.
It's a lot. Okay. Yeah. A lot of people would argue a lot of 94s. So, like, people would put Richter in there. People put Messier in there. People would put even players that didn't win the Stanley Cup but that have their names in the rafters. The Rod Gilberts, the Bathgates.
Why do you think we're doing this podcast?
Exactly. Getting your opinion. That's why.
Well, people are not going to agree with you. I'll tell you this. Nobody answers this the first time. Who is the unsung hero of the 94 Ranger Cup? And the unsung hero that nobody knows was Kevin Lowe. He was part of that Edmonton group. He was the best defenseman, the smartest defenseman, the toughest defenseman. I think Kevin Lowe would be, if I were picking 2 guys on that team, Messier and Lowe and Richter, 3 guys.
So you would put 3 guys from the original 3 Stanley Cups and Messier.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I love it. I really do feel like especially talking with Ranger fans, there's a recency bias. I think the first 3 Stanley Cups are almost... I feel like a lot of people just don't know that it happened. A lot of Ranger fans don't know the history of the Rangers beyond before 94, except for a few players. You know, Rod Gilbert's walking around the Garden. Of course, he's a legend. Yeah. They know who Bathgate is. His name is up on the rafters.
Right.
But beyond that, the first 3 Stanley Cups don't...
That's right. That's why I write histories.
That's why you're here, and you wrote 100 books on hockey. Exactly. Let's talk about some other playoff series, and actually, let's start with the San Jose Sharks and the Chicago Blackhawks. I feel like those 2 teams are in a similar position right now. Early first-round exits. The San Jose Sharks were in the Stanley Cup Finals last year. The Chicago Blackhawks were very close to being a dynasty team, and now both teams seem to be declining. What are we thinking?
Well, the Sharks amazed me in that they stayed up for so long. Have a very good coach in Peter DeBoer, and these old guys, Thornton, Marlowe, Pavelski, they had to be admired. And I'm not surprised that they went out. I am surprised that the Blackhawks went out in 4 straight because they have younger guys. Kane, Tays, these guys are younger. Crawford's a relatively young guy. But you know what happens? I've said this many times. That's why I don't think the Penguins are going to win the Cup, because nobody wins 2 cups in a row anymore. It's attrition. There's so much. First of all, you look at this season. Start off with the World Cup, which to me is unnecessary, but they had the World Cup. Then you got 82-game marathon. Then you have a new season. The Blackhawks won 3 cups. Do you know how much that takes out of them?
A lot.
In the head. Not only in the body, the head. Still, I couldn't believe that it would go 4 straight. I'm stunned. But that's why. Nashville, good coach. Can't underestimate the trade Weber, Subban.
So based what happened in the playoffs, Montreal first round exit, Nashville moves on. Would it be fair to say that Nashville won the trade?
No, it wouldn't be fair because Weber did a lot for this team. But on the other hand, you could say if you want to give an edge, then you have to go with Subban winning the trade because they're playing, they're not.
Of the Nashville's playing St. Louis in the second round. What happened to Minnesota? They were on such a hot streak going into the end of the regular season, and then things just fell apart.
Well, Zach Parise did not live up to the amount of money he's making. That's number one. Dubnyk in goal was playing over his head. That's number two. And Bruce Boudreau never wins.
So they're your three keys. Three keys to failure. And St. Louis trades Shattenkirk. You'd think that they would, at that point, you would think that they weren't thinking playoffs, and here they are in the second round.
Well, you might also question how good Shattenkirk really is. That's number one. Mm-hmm. And number two, remember they changed coaches, and the goalie found his confidence. And you look at Boston was revived with a new coach. The Canadiens were revived with a new coach. Islanders were revived with a new coach. It happens.
This season was very much a rejuvenation with the new coaches. There was one day in the playoffs, I'm going to find the tweet for you right now, which I thought was a very, very clever tweet based on the coaches here. This was from Tim Cowlishaw. He said, this was yesterday. He said, it's be careful who you fire day. Mike Yeo eliminates Minnesota. Alain Vigneault eliminates Montreal. Todd McClellan eliminates San Jose. So it's all the former teams.
Yeah.
In the same day.
Yeah.
All of them get
a good one.
Exact a measure of revenge on their former squads. The last playoff series that we haven't really dug into, Nashville and St. Louis. What are your thoughts on that series?
Well, I'm a bigger fan of Peter Laviolette as a coach than Mike Yeo. That's number one. There's something galvanic about this Nashville team starting with Subban, and I love a lot about the St. Louis team, but I like more of what I see in Nashville. And they must be filled with confidence from Chicago and super motivated. And you take the two goalies, Pekka Rinne is much better than anything St. Louis will ever put on the ice in goal.
Jake Allen, no.
Allen's okay, but Rinne is a better goalie.
Mm-hmm. And Anaheim and Edmonton, that rounds off the second round of the playoffs. All eyes on McDavid. How far can he carry this team through the playoffs?
Well, it's not all McDavid, okay? They got a lot of good young talent, and to me, and nobody will say this because they don't think of him, but Adam Larson has meant a lot to the Oilers' defense. They gave up a lot to get him. They gave up Taylor Hall, but he's been good. And Cam Talbot's goaltending, he's out of his mind.
Are you surprised that Talbot didn't get Vezina nod?
No, I'm not surprised.
No? Just because the quality of goaltending in the league?
Yeah. Of course, Bobrovsky's been a complete disaster now that he's got the Vezina. That's what I mean. That's what I mean about the 2 seasons.
Right.
What's then was then, and what's now is altogether different. Altogether different. So in that series, I feel a little bit the way I feel about Nashville, that there's something about Edmonton that's special.
It would be fascinating to see them make it to the finals, wouldn't it? With that team, the young crop that they have, like you said.
No, I don't want them in the finals.
No, why not?
I don't like them that much. I mean, no,
I
really,
like them that much.
No, not as the quality.
Right.
When you do the Islander games as I did, and you do the series as we did in '84 and '85, it's like when you're a Dodger fan growing up in Brooklyn, you hate the Yankees. the dislike for Edmonton never goes away in terms of not liking the team. I happen to be more of an Anaheim fan than I am an Edmonton fan, but I still think Edmonton is going to beat them.
So there's no consideration for Cam Talbot being a former Ranger and how much he meant to the community
He's not
here?
a Ranger now. Goodbye.
Okay.
Enjoy yourself.
All right. He's a Stephen McDonald Award winner, right?
Yeah, he got the award, and that's then. This is now.
Okay, fair enough. I'm just trying to make...
You can make it, but I'm not going to fool around with you. You want to know? I'll tell you what I think.
Let me ask you this, because obviously you're covering the Rangers-Ottawa series right now. What do you think the reactions are going to be post-trade in the playoffs? Zibanejad in Ottawa, Brassard here. What do you think the reactions from the fans are going to be like?
Well, the fans are going to be, obviously, this is going to be one of the more fascinating things, the way it was with Kreider. You know, the Kreider-Price thing was an ongoing thing. But the Big Z, they don't dislike him, and they got a good guy. And the Ranger fans are not going to dislike Brassard because he did good by them. And a trade was made, and now it's going to be really interesting to see how they match up.
This is a hypothetical, and I know we just talked about Talbot, but what do you think the reaction would be at MSG? Stanley Cup Finals. Let's just hypothesize, okay? Stanley Cup Finals, Rangers, Oilers. Cam Talbot's on the ice.
How can they not like this guy?
But what are they going to do, though? They want to get him off his game.
Of course, he's
they're
an
going to chant against him
now.
Right.
So you're an enemy? You know, I said, well, fair is love and what? I ain't going to like it.
But they'll cheer him after the series, no matter what.
Doesn't matter. He's wearing the enemy. He's got the bullseye.
Okay. Just curious.
Have to slay
Hockey's the best, isn't it? just
Why do you think I've been in it for 1,000 years?
Is that how long it's been?
It looks like it.
This has been really fun. This has been a blast, and I have to say, Maven.
What'd you think? I'd come here and we wouldn't have fun?
I knew it would be a good podcast. The insight's good. The conversations are good. I hope we do this
again.
What do you think? We should do this again? I think it was fun.
That's
absolutely
one of my favorite songs.
So this has been another edition of the A-Pod. You can find this on iTunes and msgnetworks.com. How often do you do your blogs on msgnetwork.com?
Well, it'll be after every single Ranger game, but I do historic stuff. I'll have a historic piece in 2 days on the. I was at the last game at the Old Garden, and I have a wonderful piece about what it was like. What they did is they brought back every living Hall of Famer, and they all went on the ice. Rocket Richard, Gordie Howe, everybody, and a lot of my heroes. And I interviewed them. In fact, I interviewed my first Toronto Maple Leaf hero from the 42 team, Sil Apps, was there.
Oh, wow.
And I met him the night before. There was a thing at a hotel across the street from the Old Garden. And so I have a piece on it.
That's awesome. So that'll be coming up in a couple days.
Yeah, it'll be, I believe, on Wednesday.
You'll appreciate this. So I've been doing some hosting at Rangers Town Square outside of Madison Square Garden. They bring in a lot of alumni.
Right.
And Pete Stemkowski was there.
Oh, Pete. See, Pete...
part of 1967 Toronto Maple Leafs
story,
team.
But Pete was a hero in his rookie year in Toronto. And he's featured in a wonderful book called The Final Game, written by a Canadian. And it's all about that last game of that series, with the Leafs winning the Cup.
Wow. It was nice to talk to him about that, and he lives here. He lives in Long Beach now. And he does stuff with the Rangers, but he also goes back. Yeah. They brought back the living 67 team for the Centennial Classic this season. So anyway, Maven, I'll let you be on your way. Thank you very much for your time.
I'll be back.